Hello, and welcome to Pishachoy's Family Reviews. Today, we have an old man to do a review for us. Old man, would you like to introduce yourself?
No.
Okay. So, Casey, what movie are we going to be talking about
I
today?
think Saving Private Ryan.
That's correct. Good job. So, Mr. Pishachoy's, can you tell us a story related to Private Ryan?
Yes, I can tell you a story related to Private Ryan. What story would you like to hear?
Can you tell us one of my grandpa?
Your grandpa. Harold, who you're named after.
Uh-huh.
He was living here in Dallas in a, I guess you call it a retirement community, kind of assisted living. He was 73, 74, and he had fought in World War II. He actually landed in France, I think about a month after the D-Day invasion. So he just, because of his birthday, because his birthday was June 16th, and the D-Day invasion was June 6th, I think is the correct date. He had just missed it, so he would have turned 18. He went to basic training, and then he got over there after the D-Day invasion, and the Allies were moving across France and trying to rout the Germans out of France and reclaim France, liberate France. And so, I don't know, he never talked very much about it. He told me a little bit about his experiences there. He drove a half-track, and he never really talked about whether he saw action or not. But he was there for the liberation of the camps, of at least one of the camps. And I'm not sure, but I think it was either Treblinka or Dachau, and how traumatic and horrible an experience that was when they went in and saw all the people there starving to death, and all of the bodies piled up. So while he was living in the assisted living community here in Dallas, they would have activities. They'd take all the people out if they wanted to go in their little vans and go see a movie or go play bingo or something like that. And they went to go see Private Ryan, which had just come out and had gotten stellar reviews because it's a Steven Spielberg masterpiece. Hey, they're so good. So he went, and I had to take him to the doctor the next day, and we were in the doctor's office, and it was a little tiny doctor's office filled with all these people. But of course, they're all Dallas people. And my dad was from Boston, and people from Boston speak differently than people from Dallas. People from Boston swear, or at least my dad did a lot. He'd say, "Jesus Christ," and stuff like that, and fucking shit and stuff like that. So
The usuals, yeah.
yeah, the usual. So I don't know why, but we got onto the conversation. I guess I asked him, so you saw Private Ryan, what did you think? And he was like, it was a piece of shit. I was like, well, why? Why was it a piece of shit, Dad? But of course, I was kind of like, God, Dad, keep it down. There's like all these, and it really was a very crowded little office filled with a lot of, Southern Christians, and I didn't want to get lynched. So I was like, keep it down. He's like, it's terrible. So what was wrong with it? So he's just like, it didn't make any sense, and he went through all of these details of like, well, first of all, they're walking across the hedgerows of France, because apparently after D-Day, they hadn't really expected this. They landed at D-Day, and then they kind of took the beaches, and they got a stronghold, and then they had to move inland. And as they move inland, what they discovered was that France, from the coasts of Normandy inland, was made up of these giant hedgerows. So there'd be a field, and then there'd be a giant hedgerow. So they couldn't get past the hedgerows because they were so tall and so thick that the tanks would get bogged down in them. So it was a real problem. So it was really slow going from 1 yard to the next through France because of all these fields and these hedgerows. Also, a lot of the fields the Germans had flooded before the Americans came, so that the tanks would get bogged down in the flooding. They opened up like the water, and there were like entire fields that were like feet deep in just water. You couldn't see it because they were fields, so you'd see the grass, and then you get in there and you get slogged down. So the first thing was he was just like, it didn't make any sense. You know, you've got this guy in the middle of France, and all of a sudden we're going to send these troops out to save just this one guy. It, you know, doesn't make any sense to do that, to risk these people just to save one person. So that was kind of a flaw that he saw. And then he was like, and they're walking across the fields. And of course, this is occupied France with all the Germans there. And he said they're all walking clustered up together having these conversations. And he said, you know, that's the first thing you learn when you're over there is you don't do that. If you're moving across a field as a platoon, as, you know, army, you know, basic, you know, foot soldiers, you separate so that if they start shooting, you're separated far enough so that they could take out one person, but the rest of you can get down. If you're all clustered together, they can take you all at once. And then he pointed out the fact that Tom Hanks had his, I guess, lieutenant stars on his helmet. He said that's another thing, was that when you went out and you were in the field and you knew that the enemy was around, you took whatever insignias you had that designated you as the leader of that command, you took it off. So, because if they saw it, that would be the first person they'd shoot, knowing that if they killed the lieutenant, the rest of the guys didn't know exactly what to do, and they'd taken out the command and they didn't know who to answer to. So everything would be disarray, and then they could take out the rest of them. So he said, well, that didn't make sense. So that was really annoying to him, because this is, of course, something that he had lived through, and he remembered, obviously, very clearly. So that bothered him. And then they capture a German soldier. And he was like, you don't release a German soldier. You capture a German soldier, you know, worst comes to worst, if you can't turn him into someone to take him back, you just kill him. You can't let him go. It's just not possible. And maybe it seems wrong, but that made no sense that they did that. And then they came to a town in France that had been bombed out, and this family's trying to give them the little baby girl. And he's like, that's just stupid. No French people would have handed over a little baby girl to the American army any more than they would have handed her over to the German army. It was like, and he just kept saying, what does Steven Spielberg think? French are fucking idiots? You think they're fucking idiots? What the fuck is the matter with it? Who would do something fucking stupid like that? It was fucking stupid. It's fucking ridiculous. So I was like, oh, okay, well, you know. He said, no, they would have figured out what to do to hide her, and they would not have handed her over. It's like, it didn't make any sense. And then when they get to the town where, was it Matt Damon, who hardly seems worth going all that trouble to save. Nothing personal, Matt, but frankly, I wouldn't. And I don't think Tom Hanks should either, even though I wouldn't go out of my way to save Tom Hanks either. No, I'm just kidding. When they finally get there, he's just like, I don't want to leave. I need to stay with my command. And my dad was just like, what? It's like they've come to take you back. Somehow they've got the notion that you get to go home because your brother's died. You go. You don't stay. But then they have to stay. He says they have to stay because a Panzer's coming to town. And of course, my dad's reaction to that was, and he drove a half-track. And of course, a Panzer would have blown a half-track completely to pieces with one shot. He was just like, there's a Panzer coming into the town, you don't stay. It's like the most powerful tank at that point in the whole Western theater. You just leave. You let the Panzer have the town, and you hope that there'll be support coming up soon enough so that you can retake the town and take out the Panzer. But you don't stay in the town and try to take out the Panzer with this small, was a group of like 6 guys, and Matt Damon. It didn't make any sense. So, all in all, I hadn't seen it yet. I saw it after that, so it was very hard for me to watch Private Ryan. I was like, I will admit the first 10 to 20 minutes with the landing on the beaches was very impressive, very well done. They obviously gleaned a lot of information from the actual newsreel footage of the people who were there filming it, which was like, you have to imagine, an incredibly terrifying job. And probably a lot of those guys died while doing it. It's very scary. It's very impactful. But then everything after that, it's like I couldn't help watch it without thinking about my dad and what he said and how it just didn't make any sense. So, unfortunately, after the first 10 to 20 minutes, the rest of the movie doesn't really make a lot of sense. It seems to kind of construct an idea around something that isn't real and doesn't really make any sense. And my dad used to love to watch, because he came back from the war and had a family. He used to love to watch Combat, and the old Combat show with Casey, stop it, with Vic Morrow. And so obviously, he thought that there were accurate depictions of what it was like to be in France or in Germany during the war. But he definitely didn't think Saving Private Ryan was one of them. And he was actually offended by it. And he was also kind of a little mystified because there were a lot of guys there who had also served. And they were all at the end of the movie crying, and just like going, oh, I remember what it was like. And he said, yeah, it wasn't like that. So, I don't know. It was very interesting. It was one of the few times my dad really talked to me about his experiences in World War II and in Germany and what it was like. And it was interesting. I was kind of glad I got to share that with him. The end.
Cool. That was fun.
You're going to post that?